Before she was a fashion industry mogul, Jessica Simpson was one of the key players in the late 90s, early 2000s teen pop revival. Her debut album, 1999's Sweet Kisses, established her image as a less provocative pop star with some serious pipes. Think Mariah Carey, but for teens. Despite the success of the singles I Wanna Love You Forever and I Think I'm in Love with You, the album, commercially, didn't live up to the expectations of her label, Columbia Records, especially when compared to her peers Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears' debuts. When the time came to follow it up, the label decided to change her image. The head of Columbia, Tommy Mottola, specifically pushed for more sex appeal, which was something he was ironically against during her first album cycle, saying he thought it would be more relatable to audiences if she didn't play up her sexuality. This mindset clearly did not last long, as Tommy became intimately involved with the second album's creation, picking songs that were a drastic departure from the saccharine ballads of her debut. While Sweet Kisses definitely had all the hallmarks of a late 90s teen pop record, it was considerably more mature than an album like Baby One More Time, and Jessica made a name for herself among audiences that didn't want sexual themes in their music. Tommy wanted to completely switch this image up though, telling Jessica she had to be thinner, hotter, and make music that would appeal to wider audiences. Obviously, this is messed up to tell anyone, and no one should be forced into an image they don't want to have, especially considering Jessica was barely 20 years old at the time. Regardless, the label got their wish, and the girl next door image Jessica had cultivated was thrown right out the window with Irresistible, the lead single and title track for her second album. Now, as messed up as I think it was to force Jessica to do music she didn't really want to do, I must confess, Irresistible is my absolute favorite song of hers. Everything from the Latin influence, R&B dance pop production, and Jessica's breathy delivery, especially in the spoken word opening, is everything I love about music from this time. I mentioned this song in my Copycat Britney Spears songs video, and I stand by my opinion 100%. This is still my favorite Britney song that isn't a Britney song. It's clear that they were trying to capitalize on her image at the time, and for what it's worth, she really did a great job with it. Same goes for the video, which sees Jessica in several midriff bearing outfits, hair perpetually blowing even when she's inside a building. I think she's supposed to be a spy, but I'd be lying if I said I knew what the actual plot was. She just kinda waltzes in, then there's a bomb, it goes off, a bunch of burglars are breaking in, then they're all dancing together. I really don't know what's happening or what the story is, but it doesn't matter cause it's a fun video regardless. Believe it or not, this was actually shocking at the time coming from Jessica, and represented a stark image change that went over well with some, but not so much with others, specifically her Christian fanbase, who you could imagine weren't too pleased with the song and video's more sexed up nature. While Irresistible got mostly positive reviews, some critics noted that it didn't feel exactly right for Jessica, saying it sounded manufactured and that she was trying too hard to fit in with contemporary acts. Of course, no one actually thought it could have been the label's fault, and instead put all the blame on Jessica for daring to be sexual when she didn't even want to be. Female pop stars in the 2000s could not win. Irresistible was a moderate hit, peaking at number 15 on the US Hot 100, and was also included on the Lizzie McGuire soundtrack. And as we all know, any proximity to Hilary Duff makes you a queen of pop. I don't make the rules, I just follow them. Apparently, some of the lyrics were changed to make the song more appropriate for kids, but I can't find this version of the song anywhere. If anyone has their old Lizzie McGuire CD, you should put a rip of it online. I need to hear this G-rated cut of an already PG song. The album's second and final single, A Little Bit, was released in August 2001, and it's a serious bop. The stuttering stop and start production, along with its instantly memorable hook, makes it pop perfection. It really is an underrated track from this era of music. The video is visually similar to Irresistible, with the futuristic setting, and Jessica sporting some hilariously early 2000s outfits. I like the fruit stripe gum top she's rocking. You just know they sold something like this at the Limited 2 back in the day. I love everything about this video. It's exactly the type of thing I picture when I think of Y2K aesthetics. Now, granted, she's not the best dancer, and this choreography is not winning any awards, but again, that was never really her gig. This was Columbia forcing her to be more like Britney, instead of being Jessica Simpson, and that influence can be heard, in parts, throughout the rest of the album. Irresistible is a mishmash of ballads, dance pop, and R&B tracks. In her 2020 memoir Open Book, which I recommend reading by the way, Jessica described the album as being a Frankenstein of whatever genres Sony thought would sell that day, and that really is how it comes across. On one hand, you have Mariah Carey-esque ballads, like For Your Love, which sounds straight out of Music Box, When You Told Me You Loved Me, which sounds straight out of Daydream, or To Fall in Love Again, which sounds straight out of Butterfly. Some of Mariah's previous collaborators did work on this album, so that would probably explain the similarities. Despite being a bit derivative, Jessica does a great job with these tracks. You could tell she was more comfortable doing these kinds of songs, and she completely bodies them. Same goes for There You Were, which is a gorgeous duet with Marc Anthony. On the other hand, you have the dancier cuts, which I'll admit are my favorites. Forever in Your Eyes is an especially great one, maintaining the Latin influence, catchiness, and sexiness of the title track. It's a real banger that deserves more attention. It was actually written by her then boyfriend and all-time hottest boy band member Nick Lachey. He can still get it, I don't care what anyone says. Another favorite track of mine is Hot Like Fire, which is early 2000s pop personified. It even includes a phone call in the beginning with her friend spilling the tea on Jessica's cheating man, and what screams Y2K pop more than a phone call to set the scene? I love how genuinely pissed she sounds throughout, and the song itself is just so catchy. The funniest part to me is the bridge, which features Jessica calling her man to tell him off. It's hilarious how all he says is hello, and then Jessica just completely goes off on him. The thought of her actually singing it through the phone just adds another layer to it. I always look forward to singing along with this part, it's so extra. The other highlights from the album include Imagination and I Never, both of which were produced by Darkchild. If Darkchild produced your song, especially in the 2000s, it was bound to be a bop, and these two are no exceptions. Both are R&B infused dance pop tracks with some killer hooks that'll stay in your head long after listening. What's It Gonna Be is another upbeat moment with a massive chorus and confrontational lyrics about Jessica questioning her potential new boyfriend. I think this song sums up the overall attitude of this album. While her debut saw her singing about how much she loved her man, Irresistible sees her demanding respect and wanting an even give-and-take relationship. There's obviously still love songs, but tracks like I Never, A Little Bit, Hot Like Fire, and What's It Gonna Be have more of a bite to them that she sells really well. Even the love songs like Irresistible and Forever in Your Eyes have more edge thanks to the more mature image she took on during this time. But honestly, that's why I find this album so conflicting. I consider Irresistible a guilty pleasure of mine. Not in the sense that it's a bad album that I find enjoyable, because I do think it's a great album. I just actually feel kind of guilty enjoying it as much as I do. Jessica was clearly forced to be like other pop acts of the time, and in doing that, she lost some of what made her unique in the first place. Sweet Kisses may have been a product of the late 90s teen pop revival, but you really could hear her soul throughout it, since she was presumably more comfortable with the content. It sounded different enough from her contemporaries, and established her as the somewhat more mature pop act. For Irresistible though, her image was entirely overhauled for the sake of selling more records, which frankly it didn't even do, as it sold well below Sweet Kisses, and promotion for it all but ended after A Little Bit failed to chart. While it's obviously fine if an artist wants to have a more provocative image, I don't think Jessica really wanted to. Her next album, In the Skin, saw her take more creative control, and represented a return to the more down-to-earth image she had before Irresistible, helped by her appearance as a lovable goofball on the MTV show Newlyweds. And since then, she's maintained that public persona. It was never really Jessica's MO to be a glamorous pop diva. She was a small-town Texan girl who used to sing in her church choir. She never really wanted the image of a Madonna or a Britney. This makes Irresistible a bit of a black sheep in her career. She doesn't really have any other albums that are this poppy, sassy, or danceable. And while she grew to be more confident in her sexuality over the next few years, it's obvious looking back that she wasn't really ready to be pushed into a sexier image at this time. Still, there are some typical Jessica ballads on this album that, in my opinion, represent what her music is generally like. Not that her whole catalog is just ballads with no upbeat dancey songs, but she definitely leans a bit more on the slower sides of things than her peers. Irresistible ends on a cover of His Eye is on the Sparrow, which is a Christian hymn, and this is really the part where you can hear her spirit come through the most. She doesn't sound like she's being forced to sing it, she's legitimately enjoying it. and sadly, I don't think she felt any other songs as much as this one. Now, with all that being said, I have to be honest and say Irresistible is my favorite Jessica Simpson album. I love Sweet Kisses, In the Skin, and A Public Affair, but Irresistible just hits the spot for me. It's the early 2000s-ness of it. I just love how unashamedly it leans into every sound that was popular at the time. And while that does make it a bit incohesive, I don't really care. I'm easy to please when it comes to albums. If there's a unifying sound or story being told, that's great. But really, all I need is a collection of songs I want to go back to. And Irresistible is definitely the Jessica album I revisit the most for its catchy hooks, over-the-top and dramatic lyrics, and her expressive performance. She's really giving you Queen of Pop energy on this, and even though I don't think her entire heart was in it, she still sells that fantasy so well. If you love this era of teen pop, Irresistible is an essential listen.